Man, that shit was disgusting.
They not like, 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 they not like.
Okay, I didn't really like the ending of Attack on Titan. From what I heard about it, I was prepared for something really bad, but I was still surprised by the fact that not only was it one of the worst endings to a popular series I know of, but it was so bad I actually got offended. Several times. Which I can't recall ever happening with a story I liked at one point. I'm gonna discuss the various aspects I didn't like over a series of videos, but for this video I'm just gonna talk about what I thought was the worst part of the ending, the Ymir retcon. I know other people have talked about this part of the plot, but I think most people neglect to illustrate just how disastrous the effects of the change are in the story. And I'm gonna say first off, I don't like how the rumbling was handled. I think it was rushed, and it didn't make much sense to me why Eren did almost anything he did after he got the Founding Titan. I'll get more into detail on that in a future video in this series, but for now, I just want to note that, despite my opinions on Eren's decisions, I was willing to accept there was a way they could make sense before the final episode came out. I couldn't say the same about Ymir. Even before the ending, the idea that Ymir would want to go with Eren's plan seemed ridiculous to me. In fact, the way the story was going, I didn't get why Isayama made Ymir more than a mindless tool, like Zeke thought. There seemed to be two logical explanations for why she would choose genocide. One, Ymir could have been an Eldian nationalist like Eren, to which I'd wonder why, since her continuing to be a slave for Eldian interests would nullify the point of her character arc. Or two, Ymir could have just hated everyone because humans suck, but then I'd wonder why the Eldians were exempt, since all the Eldian factions made morally questionable decisions. I'm not saying there is no way to make one of those two explanations work, but there seemed to be no attempt to explain Ymir's motivations. I wondered if Isayama just forgot about Ymir, because she still had no goals after she listened to Eren, and her not listening to Zeke seemed meaningless. But I don't think I could have predicted how bad the direction Isayama took her character would be. As Eren is trying to explain why he became a lunatic, he decides he's going to drop some facts about Ymir, because apparently we needed an explanation for why Ymir didn't just stomp out King Fritz when she became a Titan. I don't get why, because thematically I thought it was obvious. So obvious, in fact, I started to wonder why, in general, anime thinks everything needs an explanation. As we saw here, sometimes even the explanations have explanations. We got an explanation for how the Founding Titan powers work, how and why the Titans were created, and why Ymir ended up in that position in the past. But apparently, Ymirs Backstory needed more explanation. The reality is, Ymir not killing King Fritz while alive and continuing to make Titans wasn't a plot hole or something vague enough to need an explanation. If it was never explained, the answer would have been self-evident. Even after being enslaved, raped, and mutilated, Ymir dove in front of his spear for King Fritz because she was a slave for most of her life and didn't know how to be anything else, which is presumably why she didn't immediately run away after freeing the pigs. Ymir lost the will to live, something needed for the Titan powers to work, after hearing the lack of compassion in the king's final words to her, but after waking up in a timeless alternate dimension, knowing her children ate her, and they would pass that tradition down, she was stuck not knowing what else to do other than what was expected of her, because that was what she'd done her whole life. But no, apparently our assumption was wrong. Ymir defied King Fritz because she loved him.
道で彼女に触れて感じたことがある。信じられなかったけど、始祖ユミルはフリッツ王を愛していた。それが2000年経ってもユミルを縛り続けていたものの正体だ。
Amazing. I'm gonna say right off the bat that fuck Stockholm Syndrome, fuck all that bullshit, man. I refuse to believe what she could have felt was love for King Fritz. I know Eren says that's what he saw in her heart, even though he didn't even seem to buy that shit, but I still think this is just a fault in the writing. I'm not gonna go full, that's not love, that's just obsession. Ymir wasn't even obsessed with King Fritz. I'm not gonna let Isayama fool me into forgetting what I saw. Not only did Ymir share no positive on-screen interactions with this man, or express any interest in him at all, not only did this man abuse her all her life, not only was he blatantly flexing the harem, look at this guy, he's not even looking at her. She literally did not know anything about what he was like as a person, besides he was evil. In what way could what Ymir felt have been love? Did she just think King Fritz was hot? Does she just like abuse? If Ymir loved Fritz that much, enough to do what he wanted for 2,000 years, why didn't she revive herself? He was literally telling her to get up. Why is Ymir crying here? Stop all that weaving, bitch. Weren't you doing this out of love? If you love this man, why are you crying? I know sometimes people get sucked into abusive relationships, but this man was already dead. At this point, Ymir is making the active decision to follow his ideology for 2,000 years. Because she loves evil, I guess? Or am I really supposed to believe the pedo dick was so fucking good, she kept this up for 2,000 years? Either way, it paints a really disturbing picture of how Isayama views abuse victims. But it gets worse.
苦しみから解放してくれる誰かを求め続け、ついに現れた。それがミカサだ。
You what?
なんでミカサなの？
そりゃ始祖ユミルにしかわからねえよ。俺もまだミカサが何をするのかわからない。
I'm not even gonna go too into the fact that for a story known for setting up its twists far in advance, this has no setup at all. From the perspective of logic, just thinking about the first thing I would think would come to mind for anyone paying attention, it's ridiculous Isayama wants the audience to believe that Ymir, a person with total knowledge of all her descendants, saw Eren destroy the rules of paths and violate the concept of causality by convincing his father to take an action that would bring him to the place that would allow him to convince his father to bring him to that place. But to be convinced of her own agency, she needed to see a woman take the apparently unprecedented action of killing a man she loves, even though she already knows that will happen. Isayama didn't even know how that could make sense. Eren was just like, bro, I don't know, I'm the only character in this series with no dialogue, only she knows what the fuck is going on here, don't look at me. Ymir literally saw Eren kill his own fucking mom, which Isayama wrote in the same chapter, by the way. That's a way more significant sacrifice than Mikasa killing someone who was trying to destroy the world. But that wasn't enough to convince Ymir she had agency. Neither was Historia killing her dad. Why? I don't know, that was a fucking exact parallel, but of course Isayama doesn't even bother to address that. Here's a question that highlights arguably the biggest plot hole Ymirs Plan creates. Why did Ymir need to see Mikasa stop Eren from doing the thing Ymir allowed him to do by breaking her own programming? If Ymir can already break her programming to serve King Fritz, and she wanted Mikasa to stop the rumbling so she could get rid of the Titan powers, why would Ymir let Eren do the rumbling? He literally says she should do what she wants, so just end the Titan curse, Ymir. I don't see any way to get around that. Comment below if you have an explanation for it, but I can't find one. I don't even see why Ymir couldn't just immediately end the Titan curse if she already knew what was gonna happen. But she definitely could have ended it once Eren told her to do what she wanted to do and she stopped listening to the royal bloodline. However, to me, the most important problems Ymir's ending creates in the story aren't the plot holes, but the thematic inconsistencies. Ymir's ending didn't single-handedly destroy the entire thematic point of Attack on Titan. There's something else sharing responsibility for that I won't talk about in this video. But it did cause most of the problems in the story's moral messaging, in my opinion. For the series' ending, Ymir defying the royal bloodline was my favorite scene not only in Attack on Titan, but anime in general. To explain why I love this scene so much, let's think about what the main theme of Attack on Titan is, or was supposed to be. I'll let you guess. Just think about it for a few seconds. Pause the video for a few seconds if you need to, and come back. Okay, you ready? It's freedom. It's pretty obviously freedom. That's the only theme that runs from the first episode of Attack on Titan all the way through the pre-basement portion to the post-basement portion, besides war sucks, a theme in almost every war story since All Quiet on the Western Front. The story is about the pursuit of freedom, how it transforms people over time, what people are willing to sacrifice for it, and how people cope in the absence of freedom. Ymir activating the rumbling was supposed to be the culmination of that theme. Despite knowing he was destined for this path, Eren still has to do basically impossible things to achieve his goal, and he does that as the character that symbolizes the greatest possible human desire for freedom. By the time Eren speaks to Ymir, he's depicted like a force of nature, an inevitable anomaly that would bring about the end of the current system of oppression. Ymir, by contrast, symbolizes the greatest possible selflessness in humanity. As a result of the evil in humanity, her selflessness is warped into a subservience to power, and she comes to symbolize the greatest possible bondage of humanity. That selflessness ends up creating the situation she likes the least. We have a dialectic between Eren and Ymir that needs to get resolved, because they both feel this strong sense of compassion, but in opposite ways. And that gets resolved when Eren reminds her she has the freedom to feel compassion for herself.
俺をここまで導いたのはお前なのか。
今すぐやれユミル。
待っていたんだろう。ずっと。
俺は王家の血を引く者だ。
2000年前から誰かを。
That breaks her out of her subservience, and she decides to live her principles through herself, freeing herself from her pain in the best way she knows. Attack on Titan is making the case that we should value freedom from oppression above everything, even if the consequences of that freedom could be disastrous. At the very least, it's making the case that, given an oppressive system, that someone with enough power to enact change will have that view as inevitable. Either way, this would be an extremely radical and unique message, and it's definitely what I thought the story was going for, given Isayama's statements. I especially love the idea that it was something you could disagree with, that would create endless discussion among its fanbase, just like The Last of Us's ending, probably my favorite ending ever, did with its fanbase. But Ymir's ending completely rips apart the coherence of that message. The rumbling wasn't what Ymir wanted. The rumbling was just a tool Ymir used to conduct a puppet show that would convince her to end the suffering she was causing, all while destroying 80% of the human population of the world, because she already knew she had the power to bring Mikasa to a point where she could kill Eren. And what's the point of that change? What does it say about Ymir, the other characters, and their world, that she wants this? That sometimes people can be deranged? Well, considering Eren's ending, that might be the point, but to me, that's way less interesting. What strikes me is that freedom from oppression has nothing to do with Ymir's reasoning for what she's done. Not caring about some broader philosophical principle, Ymir enables 2 millennia of suffering because of her personal inability to stop loving her abuser. And what does that have to do with the rest of the story of Attack on Titan? Was it all about Mikasa's relationship with Eren? If so, Isayama sure wasted a lot of time on all that other stuff not involving them, as in the overwhelming majority, probably more than 90 or 95% of the story. But also, it's clearly not, right? Even if we ignore the disparity in time spent on this theme. Mikasa's struggle to oppose Eren isn't even something that's brought up until the end, after Eren's already started the rumbling. She just blindly obsesses over protecting him for the entire story until Eren literally starts doing genocide. There's not even any serious indication Mikasa's relationship with Eren is unhealthy until after the time skip. So, it's kinda unsatisfying for this to be the theme of the culmination of the story's conflict, a side plot introduced very late in the story. It's really lazy. Like, Isayama couldn't create a conclusion that made an interesting statement of freedom, war, grief, political institutions, or any other thematic idea set up in the beginning of Attack on Titan and running through the entire story, even though he created an almost perfect opportunity for him to do so. I don't know much about this project, but I assume this is why so many people are interested in Ymir Reckoning, a fanfiction that's gotten extremely popular, where Eren tries to kill everyone besides the Eldians for real. That idea is at least a continuation of the long-established themes of the story. I've seen a lot of, frankly, coping from fans of the ending, saying, "Oh, you don't understand, man, Isayama was trying to say this or that," before providing some trite or tenuous explanation of what happened. Though, to be fair, I've not seen a lot of people defend the change with Ymir. That being said, if the ending was actually good, would it really need people to run defense for it? Or would its greatness be obvious and cause endless discussion like The Last of Us's ending did, instead of being largely ignored from an analytical perspective since its release? I guess lest its supporters think about it for too long and realize how poorly written it is. I can't recall an acceptable ending having almost killed analysis of its story outside the fence of that ending. Maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like all the analyses of Attack on Titan as a full story I would have expected to see have just not happened. And for good reason, I think. It's just really hard to make sense of the story's themes in their totality, considering how much the ending confuses the messages and ideas it had been going for. But I'll save that for the next videos in the series. For now, I want to leave on the point that Ymir's ending, more than any other part of the ending, is really fucked up. I genuinely don't understand the mental state of a person who would decide to end that story in that way, unless they were really misogynistic, which I guess is a possibility. Either way, I don't think people should make excuses for this. It's not just badly written, it doesn't just ruin the story. The ideas it seems to have about trauma don't just not make sense. That the nature of this horrific relationship goes so unexamined, only compared to Eren and Mikasa's relationship, something to which it is incomparable, suggests that Isayama thinks something about Ymir's attitude is natural, or at least should intuitively make sense. And I hope I've shown it doesn't. It really doesn't. It's insulting to expect us to uncritically accept anyone, much less someone like Ymir, who consistently makes such deranged decisions for that long. It's absurd. The fans deserved a better character than this. Thanks so much to Ali, Amalia, Indy Richter, Fuzzy Zeus, Maria Person, Michael Gallagher, Nora, The Goat Elaborates, Anrust, Angela, Oride, Amiloka, Darth Cyrax, Fembub, Galen Yeats, Garrett Polk, Grey Days, Krampus, Aotruim, Montron, Peanut256, and Questing Refuge for sponsoring today's video. If you'd like to have your name read at the end of these videos, please make a donation at patreon.com/satenmadpun. You can also make a one-time donation at paypal.me/satenmadpun. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I was being sort of perfectionist about this one. I was thinking a lot about different points that I wanted to bring up. So I have some points that I'm bringing into the next video and the video after that. I just want to make sure I get all my thoughts out there. I'm probably going to make this a trilogy, and after, there are a lot of different things I want to get into. I might make a video on politics, or Disney and why I don't like Disney, or history. Maybe it'll be on pre-civilizational history and the gift economy. Let me know what you guys might be interested in. The next one's probably going to be longer, but hopefully it gets out pretty soon. I'm going to go really hard on this one. I'm going to try to make the next one faster than I made last one. I'm planning on it being longer, but I'm still gonna try. Thanks so much again, guys, for watching. I love you all. Bye!